Let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Maria Carmen Punzi. I'm a PhD researcher at the Rotterdam School of Management, and my research focuses on social enterprises in the menstrual health space. So that's quite aligned to what we're going to discuss today. And I'm just going to give you a quick sneak peek of our agenda of this afternoon. First of all, we're going to hear about the Duke-UNICEF Innovation Accelerator from Danielle. Then we will get to talk to our panelists about their entrepreneurial journeys, their challenges and their pivots. We'll have some time for Q&A, which will be moderated by Danielle again. And then we'll conclude with some words of wisdom from the panelists. So I'll now give the word to Danielle Kjær, who is Menstrual Health and Hygiene Innovation Consultant at UNICEF.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Maria Carmen. I'm so happy to see so many people in here. We already have 85 participants. On behalf of a partnership between Duke-UNICEF and UNICEF USA, I'm really excited to share more about how this dynamic accelerator program is working to scale 6 sustainable solutions to increase impact around menstrual health and hygiene, or MHH, in East Africa. Leveraging UNICEF's global presence and the world-renowned social entrepreneurship expertise at Duke, this accelerator has been providing capacity development and skill-building training around how to strengthen local ecosystems, develop a solid theory of change, and design viable business models, all to support innovators to scale their impact across East Africa. And to that point, I'd really love to, I'm excited to introduce you to 6 of these enterprises. The first one is Sakode in Burundi. Led by Miss Grace Francois Nibizi, Sakode created Akateka, the first washable, reusable sanitary pad uniquely designed with special bikini-like straps to be worn with or without underwear. Kasole Secrets is a social enterprise that's out of Tanzania. Under the leadership of Hyacinto Mutuyeko, Kasole Secrets produces Glory sanitary napkins, disposable pads engineered with ultra-absorbent and naturally hypoallergenic bamboo fiber. Then we have Femme International in Tanzania and in parts of Kenya as well, they operate. Florence Akara and Jennifer Rubli have developed an innovative last-mile delivery initiative that trains and economically empowers local women to sell a variety of safe and affordable menstrual products. Then we have Thai Tanzania. Ian Tarimo leads a team that uses 3D animation video content to raise awareness around the issues affecting adolescent girls in Tanzania, including MHH. Then we have Lily Health in Kenya. McGregor Leonards heads the development of an interactive mobile chat service that provides girls and women with private, trusted, and discreet sexual and reproductive health advice. And then last but not least, Hodaka Kusugi leads the scale-up of Aki in Kenya, the world's first open source period tracking app that provides reliable, evidence-based menstrual health information created for girls and with girls. The reason we shared all of these is because we're very excited to have you get in touch with them. Any of these social enterprises are open for partnerships, and if any of them look interesting to you, please don't hesitate to get in contact. They're all here attending this webinar as well, so you can exchange via the chat or via direct message. Also, you can hear more about Aki and the development of this app and putting girls at the center of innovation this Thursday at the UNICEF MHM virtual conference, which I hope most of you will be attending. That's happening from 7 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 1 to 5 p.m. Central European Time, and 2 to 6 p.m. East African Time. So that's it for me for now. I'm going to hand it back over to Maria Carmen to start the exciting panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. And that really sounds like a promising cohort of menstrual health entrepreneurs, and I'm also looking forward to know more about them. So it's a great honor to be moderating this panel today. I think probably many of you in the audience already know that the last years have seen a fast-growing ecosystem around menstrual health, which is really exciting. We see new innovators, new activists who have joined the movement. And this afternoon, or this morning for some of us, we really want to leverage the learnings from three of the most long-standing enterprises in this space. There's not many of them that have come so far, and we really believe that their experience and their stories can inspire and encourage the menstrual health community. So I'm really looking forward to hear what they have to say. And before we start, we also would love to hear from you. So as the audience, you can type in your questions in the chat box, and at the end, we'll make some time to answer 3 or 4 of them. So dear panelists, now I'm on to you. Thank you for joining us today. Let's do a round of introduction about yourself and your company. We can start from Malyse, then we go to Julie, and then Sophia.
Right. Hello, everyone. My name is Malyse Uwase, and I work for Kasha as a Director of Health and Partnerships. Kasha is an e-commerce platform for women's health, personal care, and menstrual care products. We started in Rwanda in 2016 and expanded into Kenya as well. So currently we're operating into markets within East Africa. And when we started, our focus was really around improving access to menstrual care products, as well as sexual and reproductive health products, because it can be stigmatizing for women to get them in person, or based on where they live, access to pharmacies or clinics was not also easy. So that's really our specialty area. And yeah, and I'm happy to be a part of this panel.
All right, so my turn. Hello, everyone. My name is Julie. I'm from Denmark and CEO and co-founder of Ruby Cup. I've been with Ruby Cup since 2011 when we started, and spent first 3 years in Kenya and then the last years in Spain. We are a social business or social enterprise, and we were the first menstrual cup brand to incorporate a buy one, give one model into our business. So it means that for any Ruby Cup sold anywhere in the world, it includes a donation to someone without access to period care products. Yeah, we sell online, offline, and both B2C and B2B. And then we have donation programs with partners around the world.
Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Sophia Granville, and I am the co-founder of AfriPads. We have grown over the years into the largest dedicated social business that's strictly manufacturing reusable sanitary pads on the continent in Africa. And our operations are based largely in Uganda, where we do our manufacturing. We also have a presence in Kenya, but our work and our products go across Africa in partnership with hundreds of organizations and NGOs. And we also have a retail brand that we distribute and sell largely in Uganda, but growing into East Africa.
Great, thank you all. And I really want to highlight, I think you all represent companies that are not simply menstrual health companies, but you represent a manufacturing company, an e-commerce company, and another company which has the buy one, give one model at its core. So this is also really about business learning and the entrepreneurial journey. And I'm really glad that you made the time for us today. So today we really want to understand, like, what is the full range of your growth and your development? So we're going to go right into it. And my first question, let's say, is how did your enterprise look like when you first started out? Because, I mean, now you've been in the business for a while, but it was probably not the same 5 to 10 years ago. And I would like maybe to start with Sophia now, while we go to Julie and then Malyse at the end.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you. And today, you know, it really feels actually like a very apt day to be reflecting on our journey, because our certificate of incorporation has today's date 10 years ago on it. So we're reflecting on a 10-year journey. And when we started, we were in Uganda and we had a very tiny operation of about 5 young women working for us as tailors in this small factory. And our original business plan was that we would establish regional manufacturing centers across the country. And the plan was to grow the existing factory to around 30 women, to develop the standard operating procedures for a production unit, and then to replicate this a factory in the north, a factory in the south, a factory in the east and in the west, and perhaps one in the central area where Kampala is. And so we would have this copy-paste model. And that was the projection within the first 3 years, 4 or 5 factories producing pads and really having that distribution model that focused on regional supply and demand. And the logic for us was that by decentralizing manufacturing in favor of these small production units, that we could really achieve significant social impact value that we felt was really important to our business model. And so as an example, we could have these manufacturing sites in parts of the country that really needed it. So in the West, where we have refugee camps and IDP settlements, in the North, which is particularly disadvantaged, we could come in and by creating a manufacturing site, we could stimulate rural development. We could create jobs for women and girls, or women in particular, who were more disadvantaged and living more on the margins of society. And on the business side, what we really anticipated is that by putting these regional factories around, we could actually lower our distribution costs. And we could pass on those savings to the women and girls who were buying our products. And in essence, cutting out a bit of the middleman and the distribution and transport costs that in the African context are often so prohibitively expensive. And on top of that, we also imagined that having regional factories would allow us to be more responsive to the local demand and possibly even to variances in preferences in terms of product. And there was so much appeal for this original business model and so much support for it. Investors and shareholders loved it. NGOs were lining up to partner with us. It was the beginning of these public-private partnerships, and that whole idea was very hot. And we had a perfect pitch. We could come in, we could partner with an organization, perhaps even get some funding or some in-kind support in the idea of a factory location or something like that. And we could in turn provide livelihoods and financial income for the beneficiaries of these organizations. And so we really thought that as soon as we got this right, we could also start replicating this model in the neighboring countries, in Kenya and then in Tanzania and so on. And so this idea of decentralized manufacturing for us was really checking all the boxes. It was high impact, it was scalable, it was replicable, and it had this great gender focus. So it really blended the business goals with the social objectives. And I think I want to flag this from the start because, you know, we're here today talking about an innovation accelerator and thinking about other social entrepreneurs who are in that process of scaling their business. And oftentimes I think we can get excited about the things that other people are interested in for your business or how they could benefit from your business. But at the end of the day, you really have to look critically at your model. And it's easy to get excited and focus on sort of the endless social good that you can build into the business. But at the end of the day, the financial model has to be there and it has to make sense. Otherwise, you don't have a business to talk about, social business or otherwise. And it really took us opening and in 10 months down the road, closing our second factory to realize that our business model needed to pivot and to realize that for us to make our model work, we needed to start with centralized production. And maybe in time, we would get down to the point where we have factories in other countries, but to begin with and to really get our enterprise from that position of seed idea to scale, we needed the efficiencies and economies of scale to make that happen. So that was our biggest pivot in our journey thus far.
Thank you for sharing. Julie?
Okay, thank you. That was very exciting. We are actually a company born out of business school. I was studying at Copenhagen Business School, and that's where I met my two co-founders. And we were studying sustainable business strategies and social entrepreneurship, which was kind of like up and coming also back then. And we were really keen on trying to start something together and try and use what we've learned in business school. We wanted to change the world with business was our motto. And we had actually several business ideas. It wasn't only Ruby Cup, but Ruby Cup won in the end because it seemed like it had the most potential as a product and as a business, because it is a product with a massive market. So we applied for some funding. We got a grant early on for a good business plan from the Swedish development agency, and then we basically packed our bags and went off to Kenya. It all went very fast. All happened within 6 months or so. What we had done prior to that was to contact organizations and NGOs all over the world, whatever we could find that worked with women or within sexual and reproductive health, that field. And we asked them if they thought that the cup would be a good solution and how they were dealing with menstruation in their work. And we got this massive response, which is also why or when it really dawned on me how big big an issue or challenge, how many challenges there are with menstruation. So we got a grant, and our business model back then was very much from business school. We wanted to have this extremely sustainable product that can last for years, and then we wanted to set up a women-to-women direct sales model, and so that the women could sell Ruby Cup in their local communities and also earn an income on that. So there was like a sustainability component, and then there was an income generating component, and we thought that that was a perfect idea. And we also had projections of reaching thousands of women and selling lots of cups and creating lots of employment and opportunities. What really happened was that we piloted in 3 different informal settlements in Nairobi for 6 months. We had 15 women on board that were trained, and we gave them kind of different pricing, different warranties on the product. We did a lot of things to try and test how the sales would go, and they sold, I think, 3 in 6 months. And then we learned that, first of all, the cup at that time was extremely unknown, so they were very, very skeptical of what this new product was. And then number 2, there's like this inherent conflict in, if you are selling a sustainable product, it's hard to generate a sustainable income because a woman can only sell it once to the people that she has in her network. So the income generating side was not really working either. And then during that time, the most important kind of takeout we had was that a lot of these women, they said that our daughters like could really, really make good use of this product. They're the ones that suffer in silence more than many others. And then that's why we came up with the buy one, give one model, basically copied Tom's shoes. And we started selling online in Europe first, and then started building the donation programs. And yeah, so that was killing our darling from business school, but yeah, it's like when reality hits you, and we wanted it to go on, and running out of funding, we had to pivot in that way as well.
Thanks for sharing, Malyse.
Yes. So on our side, on Kasha's side, when we originally started in 2016 in Rwanda, as I mentioned, our priority or focus products has always been menstrual care products, so sexual and reproductive health. So that's what we generally had. We had products within these 2 categories, and then we tested the model. And we started receiving feedback from initial consumers, and they were glad about the experience of not having to go in person within a pharmacy or maybe a shop. But at the same time, Kasha had only 2 types of products on his platform. So it was either menstrual care or maybe you're buying, for example, contraception. So when we were saying that it's confidential, it wasn't really meeting the confidential aspect for our consumers. It improved certain aspects of their experience, but not completely. And then women also started saying, well, generally, if I buy my menstrual care products, I also include products for women that have babies. For example, they purchase diapers, or that's the time that I buy soaps or lotion for my whole family, for example. And now I'm able to order my pad on Kasha, but then I have to still go in person into a boutique or a shop and purchase these other products. So ultimately, the experience is not as convenient as I thought it could be. And so what we did is we took all this feedback that indicated that women wanted to see more products, especially within the range of personal care on our platform. And we added these products, and it really helped on 2 points. One, it means now that we have a variety of products. We're talking about beauty or personal care. If you could be on Kasha buying shea butter for your natural hair, you could be buying a mascara, you could be buying tampons or condoms, but there is a variety of products where the brand itself is not just associated with these 2 products, because we felt that was the way to be strong and to improve access, but it wasn't working. And second, for women who live busy lives or really want a platform where they can access a lot of products at the same time, we were able to meet that demand as well. So now you can buy diapers for your baby or infant children. You can purchase lotion for yourself or beauty products. So I think being flexible and understanding that our mission is still to increase access to these products, which are critical for us, but also hearing our consumers when they indicated where the model wasn't necessarily working for them and also their families. And then a second point, which is interesting because it's similar to the point that Julie mentioned, but worked on our side, is we've always wanted to serve women in, of various socioeconomic background. And what we did is our platform is available online and also offline via a USSD system that can be dialed by using any feature phone. It doesn't have to be a smartphone. And we thought originally that having these 2 platforms, so the online and the offline platform, and then raising awareness around them was going to work, and people would start placing orders on their own. We could do a few activities within communities to raise awareness, but we realized very quickly that in low-income areas it wasn't working. Yes, women use the USSD system for M-Pesa, for example, here or in Rwanda to purchase credit units, but it's a different experience altogether when you're doing e-commerce. And so what we did is we started recruiting women in these areas so that they can assist new customers, especially when it's their first orders, to show them the process and also raise awareness around e-commerce generally and support with a last mile delivery. And once we did that, it really changed. And we had tried also as the office staff members team to go into the communities and explain, hold session, but that had not picked up until we made that change of having agents who support with information and last mile delivery. That's when we saw an uptake of consumers that use our USSD line as well. So I would say these 2 things: adding more products and then ensuring that we have agents in low-income communities to make sure that an e-commerce model works for our consumers in those areas.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's so fascinating to hear how at some point as an entrepreneur you have to detach from what you think social good will be looking like and start hearing from your customers and from your consumers and try to tailor it to what your business will look like. And I have so many questions also coming up in my mind. Maybe I should use the chat that I hope our audience is using now for the Q&A section, which will be happening at the end. But now, really, I want to know, there's been some years between the stories that you told us and where we are now. And today we really want to understand pivoting and adapting to change, and what does your business look like now? What have been the major changes, and how is your business looking like now? Now we can change again. We can start from Julie, and then we go to Malyse and Sophia.
For us nowadays, we are very focused on partnerships. When we started doing distributions or donation programs with the Ruby Cups, in the beginning we did everything ourselves. But I think the most important thing is, as a company, is how to scale, and conducting the workshops and the distributions is quite a time-consuming and a resource-heavy project. So we quickly started to work with partners, and so that's how the social impact side works today. We work with partners, I think right now in 12 or 13 different countries. We have a selection process for partners now. So over the years, we've, from the distributions and the learnings, also from our partners, we've learned enormously. We have like a selection process for criteria that has to be in place before we engage in any donation partnerships. And there has to be not only the educational workshops, there has to be follow-up and sustained support, and there has to be monitoring and evaluation, so we can get data back and we can get smarter and learn how to do it even better. So that's how it works today. We have actually just recently, because I think for our partners, or many of them that have approached us, have these amazing intentions, but there's, once you get down to it and what you require to do on the ground, it's cost heavy and it requires a lot of resources. So sometimes we do engage in a partnership and then it dies for whatever reason, and then whether those cups are actually having the full potential impact that they could do, or the participants in the program could get lost. So now we actually ask any new partners to pay upfront to show commitment, and then we will review afterwards whether they become donation partners. Our partners are extremely diverse. I think that's important to say also. We really try and listen to their expertise, because they are the ones that know the communities they work in. They're the ones that have buy-in with the communities and trust. So we have some criteria, but it's very localized, and partners can be super grassroots, community-based, and then bigger international NGOs like Kjær International we've worked with. So we really try to be good learners, and kind of put in the good experiences and criteria we have, but then we listen a lot to the partners and what happens on the ground. And the good thing is, partners that are on the ground long term, they create create peer-to-peer education. There are schools where the older girls that are already using Ruby Cup, they will teach the younger girls, and it's kind of this rings in the water effect, and that's really what we want to aim for, like the long-term commitment on the ground to really have a long-term impact.
Thank you, Julie. Malyse, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I think on our side, it's sort of similar. What has changed is we had to think about our customers in multiple segments, so just beyond serving women on an individual basis. For example, we've always been passionate as well around sharing information and doing health education sessions, but that's not necessarily an area for our expertise, or a system through which we could bring in revenue. But we quickly noticed that some of the institutions within the communities that we operated in, particularly schools and sometimes NGOs, wanted to partner with Kasha, where we would provide health information session to their beneficiaries or students, and at the same time purchase in bulk certain products, and it's usually within menstrual care, or maybe a few SRH products when it's universities. So now we do have a program where we work directly with institutions. So I think, as Julie mentioned, thinking about ideal partnerships that work for your business and that also still help you on the social mission front. And along the same line as well, we noticed that, especially after expanding and adding more products, that some brands and companies generally want to have consumer insights around how their products are doing. And it's more than just quantitative insights, which they can get from multiple suppliers, but it's more getting the qualitative insights as well. How do people respond to their products? Why do they prefer them compared to maybe another product? And so we also added a B2B or business arm where we work with certain companies or organizations to provide insights as well. So I think now we have the institutional program. We do serve individual customers as well. And then we added a B2B component that is more focused on the provision of consumer insights, or maybe introducing a new product within a new market and getting learnings about how it's working and how it's being received.
Fascinating, thanks. Sophia?
Yeah, great. Well, I think, you know, to reflect sort of on where we've come over the last 10 years, we still have the core of our operations in Uganda. And we did go down that route of centralizing our manufacturing. It didn't happen overnight because, you know, like any startup, we didn't have the resources to build a factory. And part of our business model was a commitment to rural manufacturing, to investing in developing rural communities in doing so. And the reality was that finding a building the size we needed in a remote village in the southwest of Uganda just wasn't possible. It didn't exist. And so we knew if we were going to do that, we were going to have to build it ourselves. So it was a stepwise process. And I think that's also sort of one of the learnings is you don't get where you want to be overnight. You have to take those incremental steps to getting there. And so on our side, initially we had all of our manufacturing happening within the same general village. But then ultimately we were able to construct a factory. And that's something that we probably would never have done if we had gone with that regional distribution and manufacturing model, because we wouldn't have needed to. But because we did, we were really able to, you know, I'd say put our investment and our business value where our social values are, and really demonstrate that by building this enormous factory that is able to employ currently over 150 people, but we have the capacity to more than double. So we have the capacity to grow and to scale from there. And in doing so, we've also really been able to transform that community in the process. We have brought jobs, you know, and in particular jobs for women into this area. We have, through the job creation, money is, you know, going into that economy. And we were even able to lobby the government to electrify that village. So we're operating now, producing, you know, a quality certified, really world-class product in a village that was only electrified about 5 years ago. So for us, this has really been our evolution. And as we did so, we've really been able to achieve the optimizations that we needed to by being under one roof. So that was supply chain, raw material management, inventory management, investing in the right manufacturing equipment to let us have our own sort of mini industrial revolution right there within our factory. And to also have all of the distribution logistics and oversight and the skills that we need to run, again, you know, a really high-class factory in a remote part of rural Africa. And so I think, you know, as we made that shift, that is also what allowed us to make the shift to producing larger volumes. And that allowed us to enter into another space of sales and partnership, which is working with humanitarian and relief organizations who often have immediate needs for high volume orders. And typically that would not be able to be produced on the continent, but because of our local manufacturing, you don't have the lead times of importing products from China while you wait for those products to get there. We were able to generate the business and the growth and even the, you know, the financing to keep large stocks on hand and to immediately respond to emergencies. And so that's actually how then the business and sales side of our model has evolved as well. Is much like Julie at RubyCup, we initially focused and believed that we would be working primarily with a direct-to-consumer sales model. And over time, what we actually saw is that that model is growing more slowly for a lot of the challenges actually that Julie also mentioned. Behavior change takes time, and it's hard to build a business model that can be sustainable just on that alone. And at the same time, we were in the right place at the right time, I think, in discussing with organizations that work in WASH and gender and humanitarian relief, that product choice goes beyond single-use menstrual products, and as well that just as a baseline, menstrual health is something that should be a mandated part of most organizations' activities, given that we see, menstrual health as, a critical part of our own human rights. And so that conversation was able to happen simultaneously. So our business has evolved from this idea of small scale manufacturing, doing local supply, to much larger scale volumes, working with partners really across the continent. And so, a key part of our business model today is also partnership, recognizing that you can do what you do really well, but you can't do the full scope by yourself. And so we work with hundreds of organizations across up to 40 countries. And in working with these organizations, it's where we also realized that we needed to expand our offering and what we do beyond just manufacturing a product. The product is important, but like any product, however simple to use, it requires education, and there's so much social value that can be added by adding an educational component. And so today we offer a much more holistic approach where we have our products, where we have a line of different products that cater to different age groups and preferences. And then we combine that with menstrual health education, and as well with monitoring and evaluation tools that can be done both virtually and on the ground, in order to help organizations really make the case for menstruation, and to make the case that providing women with products that they deem acceptable and appropriate isn't a small box, that there is variation and opportunity there, and how can we best fit into that. So that's really where we are today. And I think that, for us, a key part of all of this has been, I think, recognizing that by making a high quality product through economies of scale, through centralized manufacturing, and doing so at an accessible cost, we've been really able to help, I think, shift the perception and the narrative that single-use menstrual products are the only sanitary solution out there, or the only solution that women and girls need out there. And that tide is changing. Reusable products, whether cups or period panties or reusable pads, are contributing to the need, and we are demonstrating that there is acceptability and preference for these products. And I think that is really an important shift over the last 10 years that we've been proud to help contribute to.
Great. Thank you so much. And it's so interesting how your stories are somewhat different, but at the same time, they point to the same direction, which is you cannot do it all. And which are the values that you're going to hold on to? The business value, the social values. You cannot provide the information, the free products, and change the infrastructure, and also lobby at the same time. I think both time, effort, and money are limited. So I think in a way, I've heard all of you mention choose the right partners, partner with organizations that know what they're doing, that know their local context. And also I think your customers and your beneficiaries can be a real source of knowing where the need is. Because I guess coming back to the previous question, we don't always know what the community needs until we start working with them and we realize what the actual need is. So I also love the idea that the women that use Kasha want to order the shea butter at the same time as the tampon or the contraceptive of choice, because I think that also is part of the normalization. But sometimes it's in our minds and in our brains as development practitioners or social entrepreneurs to want to frame this as an issue, while sometimes it's just something that happens. So really great to hear your experiences, and thanks for sharing your wisdom on this. And I guess we're now getting more and more personal, because the entrepreneurship journey is also about a personal journey. So I'm really kind of curious, looking back to what's been and what you've gone through. If you had to, again, look back and think, what kind of skills or insights did you wish you had already back then. If you could speak to your younger entrepreneurial self, let's say, maybe we can start with Malyse and then go to Sophia and Julie. This is a quick one, but I'm curious.
Okay. I think for me, it's, I will point out one thing. When you're working in a startup and you're trying to build a team, you have to look at your applicants differently. I think there's the aspect of trying to identify if they have the right experience and they have the right expertise. But then the other question that's important as well, will they thrive in a startup work environment? Because I often say that we work in organized chaos, and I think maybe Sophia and Julie might feel the same way, meaning that sometimes you never know on a day-to-day basis how the day is going to go, what are going to be new challenges. We've all mentioned how we've had to change our model, so it's not as if the vision you had from the start is what you're going to end up with. And so you need people that support you around that, who understand that sometimes you'll try things and we will fail as a team, and then you still have to continue to go and figure out what's the next challenge. You need people who are agile and can adjust quickly and are flexible. And if they only have the experience and expertise and they've grown other companies significantly, but they lack that aspect of that disorganized chaos, then they don't thrive. So I feel that recruiting can be slightly different compared to maybe other places. And also personally, I came from an NGO background and development background, so I felt that I had to educate myself so much on marketing and sales, and even though I'm leading health, but it's still tied, and it's a whole different way of thinking about it's always thinking about the consumer first, which wasn't always that way. And so every product, every service you do, every grant you implement, your new lens is, do the people that I serve need it? And if they need it, why? What is indicating this? How do I best reach them? I love sharing information, but if it's too public health, no one listens to it. And then we do some images that are better on social media, and all of a sudden there are more clicks and more questions. So I think really understanding how to sell and pitch every single idea is something that I had to learn as well.
Yeah, I'd love to build on that, Malyse. I mean, I think that, you know, one of the things that you realize is, as an entrepreneur, especially, you know, when you're founding something and you've created an idea, the passion is there. There's no lack of passion and belief for your idea. But I think that recognition that the passion alone won't get you there. That you can use your passion as a tool to get investment, to build partnerships, to market and sell your idea. You might be the best person to do that. But to actually grow and scale your business, you come from one background. Set of skills. So I think really, you know, in the early days, we were lean, we had to be, but we also believed that was, you know, the right way for us to be growing. But I think that had we brought in some expertise earlier on in different fields, whether it's something like marketing or logistics, supply chain, for us, you know, I would also say even just our production, it took us years to develop a proper R&D team like we have today. And so build that team around you, get the right skills on board, find your biggest gaps, your biggest weaknesses for yourself as an entrepreneur or for your team, and solve for that. And recognize that bringing that person on board might cost you something, but it will accelerate your growth. And it will help you as you fail forward to, you know, I'd say to really get to your stride a lot faster. So use your passion, bottle it, capture it, use it as fuel, but don't rely on that solely to get you where you think you need to go. And I would also say, you know, bringing in mentors. Surrounding yourself by people who know what you don't know. So if your background is not business, having those people around you to really help you think and focus on the business side, because the social possibilities are endless, and those are fun and exciting to think about. But at the end of the day, you're trying to make a business that stands on its own 2 feet as well. So I'd say that those two things, that skill set and that sort of group around you of people who can mentor you and fill your gaps.
Yeah, I can definitely echo all of that. Yeah, I was also going to say, like, the fun part is the social impact, and that's also, I think, where the passion lies. But realizing really that, like, building a business is just, you need to grind and grind and grind. You need to sell, and you need to build all of that up. The entire, like, apparatus of distribution and international sales, imports, exports of the physical product, the admin, financial management that follows that. I wish I would have known a little bit more what we were trying to, like, grasp over when we started. So yeah, don't underestimate. I would also say, like, don't underestimate the business side. And also, I think, realizing, well, we've always known that, but it's like we owe it to the company to make a really, really good business, because otherwise we can't do any impact. So it goes together. Yeah, and then I think also realizing over the years, so you have this burning passion, and I think in the beginning it's like you live or die for this project, but I think also realizing that you also need to allow yourself some free time, and that, like, reflecting or relaxing the mind is also part of the job. It's like an important part of the job in terms of sustainability, I guess, mental sustainability in the long term.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think these three insights are so aligned, and I think they speak to the fact that after a while you realize there's a balance between the mental health and the business health, but also there is no good impact without a solid business, and there's some choices that need to be made there. So very insightful. Thank you for sharing. And I guess, you know, we've been through this story before. There are some expectations that are sometimes not met. So I guess I don't guess, I'm asking you if you've come across challenges or fears or breakthroughs that you'd like to share with us. And the reason why I'm asking this is because I think it's important to highlight how social businesses are great. They are, I think, the future, but they need to be demystified and they need to be looked at in their reality. It's as hard, if not harder, than doing business or having a nonprofit organization. So it's not just because it's called a social business that it's easier or that, like, money will just flow in. And therefore, I would really like to ask you to share if you've had challenges, what were there, and maybe we can start with Sophia now. We go to Julie and then Malyse.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it, Maria Carmen. I mean, just because this is social business, I think there's this idea sometimes that it's fun and maybe that it's an easier path somehow to getting there. And there's this demystifying. So I actually think that at the earlier part of our journey, about 10 years ago, before social business was really even a term, an expression, there was a perception often of, you know, well, why are you doing this as a business? Why are you going to try to sell this product? Why wouldn't you just give it away? People really need it. So almost sort of seeing business as maybe like the dirty side of development. And rather than seeing it as a tool or a vehicle, which is how we really see it, it's a way of driving social change and economic development that inherently builds into the core of the DNA of the business, the sustainability and the financial piece with that, you know, social impact side. And so I think demystifying social business has definitely been something that has happened or is happening as we speak. And I think that, you know, also now as we look towards growth, the challenge or a major challenge that I see social businesses facing is as we reach scale, as we become bigger and able to play on the same platform as, you know, some of the bigger, maybe even corporates. How do you stay alive? How do you stay afloat? And because I think that as a social business, you are already investing into impact and you are making choices that you wouldn't normally make if you were a traditional business focused just on bottom line. And, you know, for us, an example of that is the factory that we've built in the middle of, you know, a rural village in Uganda, or investing in education materials that are hard to monetize, but we think are an important and necessary addition with our product. And so I think that, you know, everyone tuned in, I believe, is really focused on menstrual health. We share the feeling that this is an important way forward. But for all of the organizations, companies, and social entrepreneurs out there, we also need the people who we partner with to place a premium value on partnering with a social business. Because if it just comes down to the cost of your product, or you know, a really simple rubric for deciding whether we go with company A or B, the social enterprise will rarely win that fight. And it's when you look at the all-encompassing contributions of a social business, when you look at their impact on SDGs, when you look at their impact on job creation, on just, I'd say, behavior change, you suddenly have a much bigger case for working with that organization. But that system takes time to change. Even UN systems like that take a long time to change. And so how do we start shifting those systems to make an ecosystem which is actually more supportive in the long term of social businesses as they get started and social businesses as they reach scale? And that's really a challenge, I think, for the long-term sustainability and viability of social businesses.
Thank you, Sophia. Malyse?
Sure. So I really liked when you use the term demystifying, and I think Sophie touched upon it. I think for us in particular, one of the challenges we're a social enterprise, but we're also doing something new in terms of availing pharmaceutical products online. And I do feel that in each country of operation, especially initially, there is a different narrative and people who don't necessarily understand our model, who feel that the model doesn't really adhere to existing regulations from where people would access normally these products in a traditional way in person. And it's almost pitching us or innovation or our model basically against the traditional one of doing things and dispensing pharmaceutical products. But if you look closely at it, we're actually building onto that foundation and expanding it, because the pharmaceutical products are still coming from a pharmacy, right? And then each woman that's ordering contraception or needs information around usage, requires a prescription, needs to provide that, and the pharmacist is actually going to verify all the information for authenticity. They're going to be the ones providing them instructions on how to use the product. So we're talking about having the same exact experience. The only difference is that you're now going into person to your pharmacy, but the products are still stored in the same way, same quality. So I think it can be frustrating, because innovation is not always here to shift things in a way where traditional ways of doing things become obsolete. It's more about trying to find a better way to do things and acknowledging that if we just have one model or one approach, there are some people who will not be served. And so what are we doing for them? And so fortunately, but also sadly in a way for us, is that this current situation of COVID-19 is shifting minds a lot around online or e-commerce platforms generally, including for the provision of health products. And so you're seeing a shift where, since now all of us globally are encouraged to practice social distancing, the fact that you have platforms where women can access, whether we're talking about menstrual care products or health products, and not have to go in person, that supports the model. And so I feel that recently there has been more positive, maybe press, if I can say that, but it's not always the easiest thing to do. And unfortunately, I feel that it's also used by people who still want to make that experience stigmatizing, because their interest is not to increase access to everyone. Their interest is to keep it at a limited number. But now it seems like there is a shift. So again, it's really showing that the model works, can help, including in crises and also in regular days. But that's one challenge for us. And I think something that it can be frustrating as you continue to work and you receive the same feedback.
Surely. Thank you for sharing. Lots of food for thought. Julie?
Yeah, I think a little bit also what you said, Sophia, about, I think competition is of course an issue, and competition is good in the sense that it keeps you on your toes, and it's amazing to see how many choices and options they're coming into the market in terms of menstrual health products. But yeah, it's thinking about like the long term, like how loud can we shout if a big corporation comes in and decides we're going to make a menstrual cup and then we're going to make a buy one give one model. I mean, what would we do in that case, right? So I guess that's always a fear, yeah, just try to build a solid business and brands to counter it, right? And then another thing is that from leaving the women to women sales model back in the day and doing this buy one give one, we're also not servicing kind of all socioeconomic backgrounds, and this is what we want to do, right? We want for people to have access to products everywhere, and information. So because donations are donations and they happened in a closed control environment, and then when the broader maybe community or demand from the community happened, then what? So yeah, so now we have come a very long way in terms of behavior change. So it's really interesting to see if the kind of like sales models, those kind of models can maybe start working again at some point.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing. And I think it's so interesting how it's so exciting that this field is moving fast and there's new players and there's new opportunities, and even the outside environment is changing so much that we also have to adapt. It keeps us on our toes, and it also really requires resilience and creativity, I think, both of them. And I know your businesses quite well, and I follow it online, and I know you also adapt your content, your message to be relevant to menstrual health and hygiene as it is today, 2020, because it's not the same as it was in 2010. It's not the same kind of conversations, it's not the same kind of language, and I think there's something to be said about having your ears very well open to also the kind of conversations that researchers and activists are having, to be part of it, because as a social business, you're also actively part of this movement to grant not only menstrual health products, but really just to fight for gender equality overall, I guess. So and I guess, you know, Malyse mentioned it just a couple minutes ago, we are going through this COVID-19 crisis, and I think all of us have heard it before, we have said it before, periods don't pause for pandemics, which is a great tagline. It's, you know, it's less exciting, the content, unfortunately, but I would really love to hear how this current situation is affecting your business operations, and what kind of challenges you and your team are facing, and how are you reacting. And we can start from Julie, then we go to Malyse, and we end with Sophia.
Well, yeah, we have been lucky because we have majority of our sales are online, and we've been able to keep fulfillment up and running. So the sales have been okay, and then for our donations, of course, we can't do big workshops and gatherings like that. So we decided to pivot the donations and direct them to healthcare workers that are working on the front line, so to speak, and healthcare workers that have necessary resources and so on to use the product. So we've been sending out donations there, and then just recently now we are starting to look a little bit at door-to-door distributions. This is very resource intensive, and it won't like work for the volumes in the long run, but in those communities where we already have a really strong presence, where Ruby Cup's already well known, and we have really good partners or people on the ground that are able to provide the support. That's one thing that we are able to do right now.
Yeah, so I think along the same line as well, since we are an online platform, we are still able to operate and deliver our products. What we have had to do is to change and to adjust to the social distancing rules and regulations within our countries of operation. So as an example, right now there's a curfew both in Rwanda and Kenya. And so we've changed our dispatch time to ensure that our riders are able to go home in time. So we decreased the number of times we would normally do deliveries. The office team is also working from home, but our supply chain and fulfillment team does come into the office, but we've decreased the number of people per shift as well, again, to adhere to social distancing rules and to provide them with the equipment while they're working and protecting themselves. That has included also training our riders, for example, to wear masks at all time and gloves when they're serving our customers. And there's also maybe a challenge from a supply chain perspective where the whole world has sort of slowed down. So when you have a lot of products on your platform, the supply chain is not still efficient for all of them. So we do run into sometimes issues of stock out. We're trying to buy in bulk as much as possible from our existing partners and the official distributors and representatives. But again, it's not easy. Sometimes things that used to be processed at a border in one day are taking 7 to 10 or maybe even 14 days. So that's where there's a challenge around certain products, including maybe a few menstrual care products or brands, which are not accessible easily in our countries of operations.
Yeah, so on our side, you know, we work across Africa, but in Uganda, where we're based, the country is on national lockdown, and that has been the case for 7 weeks. And today we find out if that is extended further. And as part of the lockdown, one of the key initial communications was that factories could stay open, but workers had to sleep on site. And that is actually something that we didn't have in place. We hire from the local community as part of our impact model in order to really lift up a certain area, but we did not have the setup at that time for our staff to be on site. And so, you know, for e-commerce companies or other industries, other businesses, it's not that. It's a transition to go to remote work and to work from home, but it's manageable. But if you're in industry and if you're in manufacturing, remote work is not an option. And so for us, you know, we really had to find a way to very quickly adapt to these new government requirements, because what we knew is that with a lockdown that could stay on, you know, in perpetuity, if our factory shut down, you know, that can really be the collapse of a business. It doesn't matter how old you are, how long you've been around and doing the work that you do, your cash flow will start to drop instantly. And so then how do you stay afloat? So for us, we made that pivot. We were having, we had a shutdown for about 2 weeks as we made sure that we could set up safely. And so now we have our team staying on site, and it's really just a huge dedication as well, I'd say, from our staff, who are largely female. They have children who are now at home because schools are closed, and that they have the enabling environment where their husbands actually see the value and recognize the value of their work enough for them to live 24/7 on site now for going on 5 weeks that they've been doing so. And so we are open, we are manufacturing, and we are as well distributing as close as within Uganda, Tanzania, South Sudan, and as far away as shipping to Iraq. And I think the challenge that will come, and we'll see how it unfolds, is how well our partners can continue to actually deliver the products that they purchase from us. And, you know, I think a big factor there as well is schools being closed, and that is a typical channel for reaching our partners. And maybe just to share one other interesting sort of development that's happened for us over the past weeks is this immediate push to transition to PPE. As a company that's a manufacturing company and manufacturing textiles, there was this immediate increase from all over, you know, is AfriPads going to switch to PPE? Can you make PPE? What would you make? Would you do masks and gowns? And we had to do a bit of soul searching in that moment, because what got us to where we are today is our partnerships. And we know that periods don't pause for pandemics. And had our customers slow down and our partners slow down in the work that they're doing to distribute products and other essential items, that would have given us pause to transition to PPE. And we've developed a plan in case we need to do so. But for right now, we're doubling down on our partners. We are focusing on producing pads. We are acknowledging that this is an essential need as well. We are providing and developing and translating all of our tools to make everything as virtual as possible for them to be able to execute the work that they do. And so I think part of this is also knowing when to pivot and when to hold fast. And so for us, the decision was to hold fast and continue doing what we do best and what we know how to do best. And, you know, in our part, contributing to the larger, I'd say, pandemic response as best that we can, while recognizing that you always need a backup plan.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, for all of you. And I think what I hear here is also a combination of complying to regulations, but also knowing where you have to step up and change your part of your model, and where you have to hold on, and where you have to get a bit more creative and kind of like grind through. And I think that that's really the overall overarching narrative here is it's about making tough choices, but in the end, it's really for the greater good. And there's a risk of just following whatever trend or whatever external pressure there is. But it's important to have your mind straight and of course also get advised by the right people. I think that you've mentioned it before, have mentors and have people that know how to advise you forward. Thank you for being willing to share so vulnerably. I think this is going to be extremely helpful for not only the social entrepreneurs in the Duke-UNICEF cohort, but also for everybody else in these times that are a bit disheartening at times. You need a little bit of courage. But before we go to our words of wisdom, I would like to pass it on to Danielle because she will be asking a couple of questions from the audience. So I will just be silent for a while she asks you, what the people in the audience are asking.
Hi everyone, Danielle again. It's been a very exciting chat box. I've been trying to capture all of the thoughts and the questions. And although we can't address all of them, I did try to group them into a few different themes. And I wanted to start with one that was really around when you first started and really the kind of startup mindset and fundraising. So thinking about raising money, have you focused more of your efforts on grants or investments? If investment, how did you choose which investors or grant programs to go after? That comes from Sarah Cotti. And then kind of combined with this, I think it's also important to talk about is around networks. So which networks offered you support in your early stages? Were there any funding or acceleration opportunities that you found particularly helpful? This is something that we are trying to do with the Duke-UNICEF Innovation Accelerator, and there are lots of other accelerators out there or incubator programs that are either focused on gender equality or female founders, and we would love to hear a little bit about what that looked like in the early days. And maybe what it looks like now too, if you're still seeking that kind of capital or grant support. Anyone can go.
I can start. I think that when it comes to grants or investments, as AfriPads, we've primarily focused on investments. We have gotten some grants over the year, but we've really strived to develop a business model that we could fund and finance from our own operations. But I think that grants can be a great opportunity. And I think the balance that I would recommend thinking about is sometimes you can take on a grant and it can help you to accelerate an idea or to pilot and trial some ideas that you might not have previously had the resources to do so, or to scale, you know, a certain concept or maybe test. But I think the challenge with some grants is in the early days, making sure that you have the bandwidth to actually do the reporting and grant management that's necessary. And also, I think if you get too focused on chasing grants, it can sometimes pull you in a direction that's a bit of like a mission drift, or drifting from your core business because you are striving to write a grant application that works within the parameters of what that grant funder is looking to fund, which might cause you to drift away a little bit from what you were actually focusing on. So I think just navigating that balance and making sure that if you are looking for funding, that you're looking for the right funding, and you have a really clear focus on what you need that money for, and that that money is what will help get you there.
Great. Anything to add, Julie or Malyse?
Exactly what Sophia said.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we had a mix of grants and investment very early on, and I think some of it was not always grants. It was also prizes for like pitching competitions and things like that, which are good for also practicing like that your business model is actually has something to offer, because you get a lot of critical questions in those competitions. I think that was good for us. But I completely agree. I think at some point the grant money comes with some grant money comes with certain interests, and at some point you need to go where your business needs to go, and then more traditional investment money is usually the better way. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I think you both captured it very well. I think investment really help you to think about your business as well as a business. I do think I agree that grants sometimes can bring you into a different direction, or they're great for allowing you to test and pilot, but you also can be consistently doing that. So if you know that you want to scale your business and make sure it's profitable, it's also good to keep that in mind. But we've also received funding both in terms of grants and investment, and it's just identifying the right people that don't bring you in a different direction, as everyone mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Very, very helpful. I think a lot of people are, getting their bearings and really trying to figure out where to get that starting capital. And it's really great to hear experiences. There were quite a few questions around sociocultural taboos and stigma, but I don't want to spend that much time on this because in light of Menstrual May and all the events coming up, I think there'll be quite a lot around that. So I'm going to move forward into one around infrastructural barriers. So are there other infrastructural barriers, as I think, in addition to lack of access of clean soap and water for cleaning the reusable menstrual products, that have prevented uptake of your products in certain communities? If so, what have these been? And importantly, have any of these barriers surprised you? And have you mitigated any of these barriers? I know it's kind of a four-part question, but I think when people talk about reusable products, there's always the concern about clean water and soap and access to that. And so since all of your businesses kind of float around needing these things, we'd love to hear from you around that.
I can go. So I think one thing that we didn't expect in the beginning has been that it's sometimes really challenging to get buy-in from the teachers at the schools where we work. Mm-hmm. Head teacher, or however the structure of the school is. In some schools they are super supportive, but there have been some cases where the teacher decides that they don't think that it's a good idea, and then kind of make that decision on behalf of all the girls in that school. So that has been one thing for us that we've had to, it's all about the community work and the outreach, and that will eventually make them potentially change their minds. But yeah, that's been a challenge for us from time to time.
Yeah, I can echo that. I can say that, as well in the relief sector, a lot of field and outreach workers tend to be men. And so the ones who are often involved in, distribution of products might have their own either taboos within them or a feeling of let's say, not being as willing to engage with the product, or to maybe hand over the knowledge that they've been trained with as effectively and comprehensively to the users. So that's definitely been a challenge. And I would say maybe less about infrastructural challenges or barriers, but just maybe like perceived barriers of that sanitary means single use, and that it really is about behavior change when it comes to multi-use products. There are always going to be some challenges and limitations with using any type of product. You have to know how to properly use and care for something. And so I think that a key factor really has just been changing that perception that reusable products can be high quality, they can be aesthetically pleasing and beautiful to look at. They can, really wow people in that sense. And I think in elevating that sort of perception of reusable products can go miles, in terms of changing behavior, willingness to try and willingness to adopt something. So I do think that has been key. Maybe another infrastructural barrier would be standards around products. So, are products regulated? Are people, and is that regulation then passed on to the consumer so the user actually feels that confidence that comes with a product that is approved quality and has a performance that will be upheld and will be met? And the same thing with working with institutional partners, whether it's an NGO or a government that wants to work with a product and have that confidence that a product has been through certification and testing. So that really didn't exist, and we've got a long way to go in this space, but we are making strides. And I do think that is an important thing to overcome. I'd say barriers to use, barriers to adoption, and then behind that comes the behavior change. But those can be a major roadblock to getting there in the first place.
Yeah, before you continue, Malyse, if you wanted to add something, it's great that you touched on the standards, because if quite a few questions came through around how to ensure the safety of different products from raw materials to the consumer. So maybe maybe you can incorporate that, Malyse, as well, because it was a question for Kasha too. Where are your products coming from, and how can you ensure the quality of those products?
Sure. So I think for all of our products generally, and including personal care or menstrual care, you always want to go with the official distributors or the people that represent the brands. For some of the locally made menstrual care products, you actually have access to the manufacturers as well, so you can go and see how they manufacture, if they respect all regulations and policies. We do have contracts in places as well with our suppliers around quality, where they're responsible for it, so that we make sure that we're actually sourcing the right materials. And then for pharmaceutical products, as I mentioned, we work with pharmacies, so our pharmaceutical products are stored within this pharmacy who are our partners and dispensed via pharmacists as well. And we do look for partners that have been operating in the areas where we are in for a significant amount of time, who respect all regulations and are known. So an example is in Rwanda, we work with Key Pharma, and it's one of the largest wholesaler retail known in the entire country. And here we have a partner that's also a manufacturer that's been operating for over 15 years in Kenya. So just knowing what first of all, regulations people need to respect, making sure they have all these documents, and then working as much as possible with the official distributors. And I also want to remind everyone, like we said, we can't all specialize in everything. So you can only specialize in controlling for quality where you fit in the supply chain. I guess, line, and then you can advocate for changes when you notice issue, but we can't unfortunately control everything. But at least when it comes to the consumers, those are some of the mechanisms that we use to control for quality.
Anything to add to our fellow cup and reusable pad producers on the quality issue?
Yeah, I guess for cups, because, well, they're not a new product, but there are not like an international standard on cups. Several countries have some standards or some requirements to the material. They differ a bit around the world. Some countries don't. Some countries ask for maybe what they perceive to be the standard of other countries, but that's not always necessarily what it is. So yeah, it can be quite challenging for when there aren't like established standards set up. We do like voluntary quality tests that can be applied on the product, but it's not like made for menstrual cups. So yeah, it can definitely be challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I want to.
I would just add by saying that you know, when it comes to the standards that do exist, I think that there's also no, that there's not that much that we can look to build those standards. So they're being built by the, you know, community of practice and best knowledge. And what we know as well is that community of knowledge needs even more than we currently have. And so, you know, I do think that what is important is that when you bring products to the market, and those products come in a wide range of, you know, quality and performance, even aesthetic look, feel, you can very easily create a negative perception and experience with a product category. And that can actually have a really negative ripple on the rest of the sector that's trying to advance, you know, a certain category of product. And so I think what we have really been trying to do is at least work towards there being these minimum quality and performance standards that make sure that all the work and energy and investment that has gone into making a product like a reusable pad more available, and for those who are interested in, you know, the use and adoption of that type of product, to give them some guarantees, and that doesn't, I'd say, the proliferation of products that are unable to meet those levels of performance don't inadvertently cast a negative impression, and so, or a negative experience. So I think that there is a growing movement, and there are more and more resources out there when it comes to standards, and to figure out how you can, I'd say, work with certification bodies, both on the product side, but also on your supply chain. There are lots of options out there for getting your raw materials tested, for having factories inspected where you source from, but those do cost money. And when you're starting, that's really hard to do. So I think just also acknowledging that as you start, you can't do everything, but as you gain the capacity, put that into your intentions, you know, and really act on that in your business to make sure that quality is a factor and is being prioritized.
It's so interesting to think that in 2020, we're really on a new frontier here with menstrual health, and, you know, like creating product standards, even though we've been menstruating since time immemorial. It's wild to kind of think about it in a big picture. There are so many other questions, but I'm afraid we don't have time because we would love to hear final words of wisdom from you. What we can do is put together all the questions, and then maybe some of the enterprises, if they have time, they can address a few, and we can send it out in the notes on the way back in a few days. So yeah, I will hand that over to Maria Carmen to close us out. Thank you to the entire community of, I think we had up to 122 people online, all asking brilliant questions, very insightful, very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. Yeah, indeed, the chat was very active, and we had yeah, over 125 people. So it's really great that people tuned in for this. So we finally reached the final part of our webinar. It already feels a bit sad to have to let you go. But while you've already shared some insights from your experiences, it's also been a lot about the challenges of the entrepreneurial journey. And now I would like you to share some words of encouragement and wisdom for all the people that tuned in today, because I think there's always some room for hope and also for positivity to sign us off with. So yeah, maybe we can start with Malyse, and then we go to Sophia and Julie.
Yeah, so I think especially for everyone who's working in this sector or thinking about or just starting, we talked about passion is not enough, but rely on passion when things get tough. I know we all have different challenges, issues, and we talked a lot about social cultural barriers. That's not easy to change. So I think always remember your passion and rely on it. And for all the new startups as well, be comfortable with your idea and your vision changing. Don't be alarmed. That's the whole process of how you figure out what is right. So do not think it's unique to you. I think every single organization goes through that. And always remember that you're creating something for a certain group of people. And so you really have to put that group of people, meaning women and girls, at the center of everything that you do. I think we all had different examples, including Sophie, for example, whose majority of employees are women. We employ women agents. So there's so many different ways to think about it, even just beyond the product. But yeah, what unifies us is the passion. So keep it alive.
Sophia?
Yeah, yeah, great. I mean, I think I would say that, yeah, same passion is needed. It is absolutely essential to helping you get there. And I think also recognizing that balance of when to stand strong and firm to your values, whether that's in regards to money you're considering taking, partners you're considering to work with, or changes that you're considering making to your business model, when to hold strong and when to pivot. I think right now, more than ever, right, we are facing just this unprecedented challenge. And I think all of us are having to sort of reimagine parts of our business, pause things that we were really programs and activities we were excited to be working on, and to sort of reimagine how those can happen. So recognizing and that sometimes you might have to burn the playbook, and that's okay. That there are different roads to getting to the same destination, and some parts of your business might take longer to realize than you first thought. But just because the road to that one objective is longer doesn't mean that all the other roads that you're taking to your sort of, I'd say, more closer realities with your business are still of value and important, and they're part of your path and your journey. So lean into those, yeah, and find that balance of when to hold strong and when pivoting is the right thing to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree very much with both of you. I think also, so I think we've said many times, don't underestimate what it takes to build a business, and then, like, on the other side of that, sometimes if you think that everything is such a mountain to climb, it can seem very overwhelming. And at least something we also did in the beginning, we spent hours and hours on coming up with a perfect business plan, and a lot of stuff is just not going to happen in the planning. It's going to happen when you actually get out in reality. So be pragmatic, I would say. Have good plans, but you need to go out and test them at some point. Otherwise, you know, and then be good at listening or taking the input that you get from testing them. I think that's a really important point. And listen to the community, or listen to, if you have good mentors that may say things that you don't agree with, but be good at listening to them in terms of, like, pragmatic business sense, I think. Yeah.
Thank you so much all for sharing, and it's been really a delightful conversation, and you have all so much to share. I just want to signal to the audience that if you enjoyed this conversation, make sure you're signed up for the MHM in Schools conference hosted by UNICEF. It's taking place this Thursday, 21st of May, and you can sign up at mhmvirtualconference.com. We're going to talk about all things innovation and putting girls at the center when it comes to menstrual health and hygiene. Thank you so much for your time. It's been very inspiring. I see it in the chat and I feel it myself. And the recording of the webinar will be circulated over email. If you want to know more about Duke-UNICEF Innovation Accelerator, you can visit the website, duke-unicef.org. And yeah, it's been really inspiring. So thank you for making the time. Stay strong in these challenging times, and I'm sure there will be also great opportunities for all people working in the menstrual health field. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Sophia, and thank you, Malyse.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.